Hi, everyone. Let's give everyone a bit of time to stop streaming a little bit here and there. But if you're in the room with us, do open the chat box and drop it over, say hi, tell us where you're from, what time of the day is it over there, and maybe even what weather you have it. So I will share. Where is my chat?
Nice. We already have 37 people.
Hi, guys. Thanks for joining us.
Hi, Sam from London.
Hi, Sam. Yes, it is 8 a.m. for the daylight savings.
It's always rainy, isn't it? I'm going to Malaysia and Indonesia, Jakarta on Sunday, and I looked at the
Oh,
weather and it was like rain, 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 rain.
I guess this season, yeah, it's a little bit. Oh, Ed, can you help me check whether people are able to chat with everybody back end?
Yes, so when you write in the chat, put everyone,
Yeah.
unless it's something personal that you want only us to see.
Well, it is the rainy season relatively. So,
Yeah.
but you do need your mosquito patches. I always emphasize that very, very strong.
Yeah.
Okay.
Wow. We've got some people from the UK
Hi. Well, I'm broadcasting from Singapore and Debbie is in Australia.
in Sydney, Australia, where it's nice and warm.
Hi, me from Denmark.
Hello, Denmark. I love this pot. Always makes me feel like the Eurovision.
Hi, Kim from China.
Wow, China.
Wow, Dan from South Wales. Not raining for once.
Hello, Melbourne. So I'm
Okay.
from Sydney, Australia, and Geraldine is situated in Singapore.
Perpetually sunny and rainy Singapore.
Wow, I've already counted 4 continents. That's
From
amazing.
Cape Town. Hi, Fiona from Newcastle. Wow, Larry, Helsinki. It's a beautiful place.
We've got some people from South Africa. We've got some people from different places in Europe. We've got Australia. We've got Asia.
It's beautiful. Well, I think we're going to have great conversations because everyone's from different parts of the world, different perspectives, different cultures. It'll be so much fun.
It
Switzerland,
will be.
hi. Okay, so I'm just gonna like kick off because it's already like 4:03. So hi again, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening to all of you, wherever you're calling from, wherever you are in the world. I'm Geraldine on stage, and it's truly my honor to be your host for our third and final webinar in our CSR webinar series titled Beyond Good Expectations, Rethinking Corporate Social Impact. Our speaker is truly one of the best minds in CSR and one of stage's most amazing authors, Debbie Hasby-Leventhal.
Yay!
This webinar is part of the What's on Stage Catalyst series. Where's my mouse? There we go. Okay, so a little bit about Stage Catalyst before we move on. Stage Catalyst was really built with the intention of making knowledge more accessible in the modern day hybrid classroom. So this is very much in line with how Stage is all about building bridges to knowledge. So just imagine everyone in your university, your students, faculty, and librarians alike have unlimited university-wide access to the hundreds of premium social science textbooks published by Sage. So through Stage Catalyst, these titles are available to you anytime, anywhere, and on any device. The platform comes with many brilliant features and benefits like personalized learning experiences, allowing 100% offline access, and just so many more that I won't cover today because we're here to listen to Debbie more. And oh, I'm so sorry about that. Let's move. Okay. So when I was talking about the unlimited access to so many hundreds of amazing titles, one of them is definitely Debbie's newly published third edition of the Strategic Corporate Social Responsibility. This one is a really, really awesome one because why? This updated edition actually offers a brilliant comprehensive approach to CSR, presenting key concepts, theories, and practical tools for real-world application. It has a brand new chapter actually on social and global issues with new case studies from many parts of the world, like our audience today. So like we have like Fairphone in the Netherlands, Sony in Japan, Lush in the UK, and parts of the world like Egypt, Bangladesh, and even China. So it's a really great resource, be it if you're teaching or you're learning CSR, do check this title out. Okay, so, well, Debbie herself needs really no introduction because she has 6 publications under her belt, super successful and well-established author, and like I mentioned, one of the really best minds in CSR to explain to you, to educate and educate the world essentially at large. And over the course of time, also became a personal friend of mine. And
I love that.
and with her today is me, Geraldine. I'm from Sage. I'm a marketing manager, and I'm also your host for today. But before we officially begin, just some simple housekeeping rules to get us started. So first off, this webinar is being recorded, so no worries if you need to leave halfway. You can always catch it on any time offline later on. You will receive the URL recording after the webinar is being done. And this webinar is a conversational format one, so you can send questions, be it try to stick to the Q&A one, so it's a lot easier for us to keep track of the questions that we want to answer. We have some questions on our side from Sage as well for Debbie to answer. Okay. And as I was mentioning, the chat is open for everyone to interact. Be kind, be nice, and let's have a really fun and learning experience together. Yeah. And any questions, drop in the Q&A, as I mentioned earlier. And after the webinar, we have a post-webinar survey. It'll be really great to get your feedback on how we did, how we can do even better for you next time in the future. And if you fulfill the survey, we'll send you webinar details and all the other amazing stuff. Okay, so now I am done with my part. I'm going to pass it to the guest of honor and the wonderful Debbie. Take it away.
Yay, thank you. If you could stop sharing, I'll start sharing mine.
Find my mouse. Okay, there we go. All right.
Okay, so here we are. Thank you so much for this generous introduction. I love that. So hi everyone from all parts of the world. I've counted 4 continents, and it's a pleasure having you here. I don't know how many of you participated in the previous 2 webinars that we've done, so I'm going to go through some of the basic ideas that are very important for us to understand before we start talking about social impact. And what I want to unpack today is what social impact means and how can companies move beyond good intentions to creating long-lasting impact. So we're going to look at all of that while also looking at 2 companies that are really impact driven, how they do it, how they communicate their impact, and so on. So a little bit about me, like Geraldine kindly said, I've got 6 books under my belt. That was my dream growing up, to be an author. Not exactly the way I imagined it, but dreams come true in different ways. So I love writing books. I love teaching. I love doing public speaking. These are my happy places. So I've done a TED Talk on the Purpose-Driven University, and I invite you to scan the code and connect with me on LinkedIn as I continue the conversation. I publish newsletters and podcasts on everything to do with purpose and impact, and I'd really love to connect with everyone who wants to connect. So I'll go back to this slide. This is a slide I show in every in every webinar that we've done because I want us to have a shared understanding of what strategic CSR means. And so when I published the first edition of the book, I borrowed someone else's definition that I did not fully subscribe to. And so the second edition, I came up with another definition. And with this one, I changed it a little bit. And the main change that I did is the why beyond CSR. And so I say that CSR is about creating net positive social impact. Holistically, strategic CSR is a holistic and long-term approach to creating a net positive social impact based on brand alignment, stakeholder integration, and ethical behavior. So you can see these are the 6 elements of strategic CSR. I went through them the last two webinars. I'm not going to talk about them now. You can go back to the other webinars. But what we want going to focus today is this idea of net positive social impact. And how did I come to write net positive instead of just social impact? This was really inspired by Paul Polman, who led Unilever for 10 years. And after he stepped down as the CEO of Unilever, he wrote a book called Net Positive. And he talks about how companies need to look into what they're doing in the world and aim to have a net positive impact in the world. So I really love that idea. And I don't want us to just talk about social impact, nor do I want us to just speak about philanthropy. I'm trying to shift away from these random acts of charity to being more strategic around the way that we can create impact. So, as we aim to create that net social positive impact that I will talk about, we do that with brand alignment. That means that what the company does, what it stands for, the brand is known for, is aligned to your efforts to make a positive impact. And we do that also with stakeholder integration, meaning we are not helping people, we're not doing something at them, we're doing things with them. And that's a different approach to how we completely involve and integrate our stakeholders in anything related to impact. About 20 years ago, the people with disability in the US said nothing about us without us. And that's the way I want us to approach stakeholder integration. If you're going to help the community, do it with the local community. If you want to help children from disadvantaged families, work with the families. Don't just do things at people, do it with people. And we have to do it ethically with a sense of duty and a sense of the motivation that it's the right thing to do, not just, we spoke before we opened the seminar about how CSR used to be about enhancing the brand and doing good PR for the company, but it really is about making sure that we do the right thing. So let's explain what do we mean by social impact, and then I will go a little bit more deeply into these ideas. So firstly, there are so many definitions I've seen around social impact. One of them lists like 20 things that you can do, which means social impact is about contributing to people's physical health, political well-being, landscaping, everything. And I thought, let's just simplify it and say social impact refers to the contribution we make to people's and the environment's well-being. And by the environment, I also include animals. So humans, non-humans, the environment, how do we contribute to the well-being? And I think that's a really good question to ask ourselves as people as well. Like we live our lives, how do we live a more purposeful life? By contributing to other people's well-being, to serving the environment, to serving the community. When we look at CSR impact, now that's going to be a little bit controversial because a lot of companies, when they talk about their impact, they talk about the outcomes of their philanthropy. They give money to charity, they help the community, they have employees go and volunteer. All of this is philanthropy. But when I talk about CSR impact, I'm trying to make it more complex by understanding that every company, through all of its actions and initiatives, not just philanthropy, create both positive and negative impacts. Meaning, by creating our products, by hiring people, by manufacturing, by shipping, by everything that we do in our core operations, we create positive and negative outcomes. We hire people, we contribute to their well-being, we give them a salary, we allow them to live with dignity, we may be giving them a purpose in life. All of this is true, but we also have negative impact maybe on their health because they work in conditions that are not good for their physical health, or they may be burned out because they might be working too long and so on. So in everything that we do in our corporations, the way we manufacture, the way we sell our product, the way the customer is using our product, the way that we work internationally, all of this would have impacts, both positive and negative. So when I talk about corporate social impact, I don't just mean philanthropy or even what I will call later impact endeavors. But I want companies to start taking inventory of everything that they do and start asking themselves, what are we doing and how does it contribute to people's well-being, to the environment well-being, positively and negatively? And that requires social impact assessment. We need to really bring the data and show that we are doing what we say that we're doing. So if we are saying that we're doing social impact, or even if we just aim to start creating social impact, we must analyze, monitor, and manage the outcomes of what we're doing. We need to collect data from day one to be able to show what are the intended and unintended social consequences, both positive and negative, of planned intervention. So this is not my definition. It's a definition I took from an article around about social impact assessment. But I remember reading it in class like maybe 10 years ago and having a light bulb moment where I go, okay, look at this. There is intended and unintended, positive and negative. Maybe we can frame something around this to show the complexity of social impact and social impact measurement. So I will get to that today. Before I do that, I want to share with you one very well-known tool for measuring social impact. It's called the basic logic model. Most of you probably heard of it, but what I want to show, the reason why I've put it here, and I've put this slide like 5 minutes before the webinar, because the message that I want to share is that inputs and activities are not impact. So when we start talking about what CSR is, we always say what CSR isn't. When we talk about impact, I want to talk about what impact is not. Because as a CSR professor who has read hundreds of CSR reports from different companies, I can tell you that still today, 80 or 90% of companies are reporting on their inputs and their activities and not on the outcomes of what they're doing. So let me explain. For example, let's say a not-for-profit organization, Meals on Wheels, right? Their input is the food that they're cooking. They're making the meals. Then they are distributing the meals to people, older people living by themselves, or people who need access to nutritious food. If the company only or the not-for-profit only reported on the inputs and activities, it would look like we cook 20 million tons of food every year and we deliver those meals to 2 million people in the US. That's input and activities. And it's important. I want to know what the company does. But more importantly, I want to know why it does it. And the why is hidden on these aspects of the impact. So outputs would be the direct results of giving those people the meals. So, for example, it would mean that 2 million people had a good meal today and are not going to bed hungry. That would be the output. The outcomes would look at these people and that would ask, what are the outcomes that they had long term because they receive those meals? So now they have food security, right? So we start moving from I got a meal to more abstract ideas of food security, less loneliness because someone comes and visits me. I feel part of the community. I have a sense of security, a sense of belonging. All of these things are long-term outcomes of just giving someone a meal. And then the impact would look at the entire society. What are the macro level changes that we've made? For example, let's say we've given those meals for a few years. Now we can see there is less death, unknown death in the community, people dying alone at home and being left there for 2 weeks, okay, before anyone discovers them. That does not happen as much for people who order meals because someone comes knocking on their doors 3 times a week, checking on them. So that would be like the long-term macro level impact would look at societal health, well-being, sense of community, etc. And so I want you to understand that when we talk about CSR impact, we're not just talking about the intentions and the inputs that they put into it, but what are the long-term outcomes of what they've done. And I always say, companies say last year we had 20,000 people volunteering, giving 1 million hours. And my question is, so what? What have they done? What have they achieved? What do you aim to achieve as a company by engaging your employees in corporate volunteering? So I'm going to show you two case studies today. The first one is called Thank You. And it's a company that has started in Australia by this guy here, Daniel, when he was 19. And he went to uni. He had a university assignment to do, and in this assignment, he discovered that 900 million people don't have access to clean water around the world. Now, a lot of us hear those stats and go, oh no, that's really upsetting, and then we don't do anything about it. But Daniel kept on thinking about it. He said, he started collecting more information about this issue, and he realized that a lot of young children, especially girls, in many parts of the world have to walk hours and hours to get to a well, pull out some water, carry 20 or 40 liters of water over their head, go back to their families, and then in the end, the water can be contaminated and end up killing the family. So he started thinking, what do I do with my whole day? What if I had to walk 6 hours today to fetch water and ended up killing my young twin sisters? So he really thought about this issue with empathy. And he thought, I want to do something about it. And so he started a company called Thank You Water. And for 3 years, they really tried to get this product on the shelves. It was very hard. But after 3 years, they realized that their biggest asset is that people are emotionally connected with what they're doing, with their purpose. And so they said, we're going to have a meeting with 7-Eleven, and we want all of you to post videos and songs and whatever on 7-Eleven website telling them, 7-Eleven, if you're going to sell Thank You Water, we're going to buy it. The community always showed up for them. People were really rooting for them. And so they started selling in 7-Eleven and then in Coles and Woolies, which are the big supermarkets in Australia. And for a while, they started having different kind of products. So they had food for food security. They had diapers for babies' health. They had the body care for sanitation and health. But over time, they started asking themselves, what are the things that create negative impact in what we're doing? And they realized that they were creating a lot of plastic waste through their bottled water and some of the other products. So then they decided to reimagine the company. They phased out the bottled water, and then later they phased out all these products. And today they only have really sustainable body care and forever bottles that they're using to help create a positive impact. And today they're focusing more on poverty. Let me show you this it's a beautiful long video, and Geraldine, I can send you the link afterwards so you can share it with everyone. I'm just going to show you 30 seconds of this video where he talks about the impact that they were helping to create.
But today, there's over 38 products on the market, some outselling every global competitor. But the best bit is this. Because you back this, $3.7 million has been raised, changing the lives of literally hundreds of thousands of people with access to water, food, to hygiene and sanitation. But this is just the beginning. Because in our world, there are still 1 billion people living in extreme poverty, but the global goal is 0 by 2030. So it's time for Thank You to go to the next level. But herein lies our greatest challenge.
Okay, so I'll send you the video. The video is incredible. You can watch it. Everything they do is really creative. They don't think outside the box. They just kick the box out altogether. They are really amazing young people who are changing the world and changing the way business is done. So I have a few people here from Australia. I can assure you they know this brand. Everyone knows their story. They're amazing. But as I said, they are not just interested in the input. So when he's talking about how much money they raised, right? It's almost $4 million by that time. Today, it's a lot more. They were not satisfied with just saying we contributed $4 million to charity. They were really showing the data around how they help to change people's well-being and societies at large. And that's really important. When we talk about social impact, we've got to bring in the stakeholders. And I teach CSR and I speak a lot about stakeholders, but here I want to introduce to you a really cool concept that I recently ran into. Meaning that when we understand who our main shareholders are, sorry, stakeholders, not shareholders, stakeholders are, what we need to understand is what could be the positive and negative impacts on each. It's no longer enough to just list your stakeholders and maybe have some conversations with them. You need to really assess the positive and negative impacts on each stakeholder group and use what we call moral imagination. It's a very cool term. There are some articles that were written about it. To predict and plan, you start to imagine what could be the positive and negative outcomes for each of these stakeholders group. And that therefore it's not limited to philanthropy. You have to think about what we do in our entire value chain. What do we do in our core operations and how all of these are affecting the employees, the customers, the suppliers, the competitors, and so on. For each group, you've got to use your moral imagination, but you also have to create meaningful relationships with them. So you don't just make assumptions. You actually have profound conversations, courageous conversations with these stakeholders to try and understand how they're being impacted by what your company is doing. And an interesting idea, we spoke in the last two sessions about AI, is that you can actually use AI and blockchain to gain an understanding of your social impact, to gain some data, to try and understand what is happening in this area, in this community, due to the work that you have been doing. So now I want to introduce to you the social impact metrics that, as I said before, when I read this definition that I've showed you before about the positive and negative impact here, I thought this could actually be put as a matrix, right? So it could be the intended and unintended, negative and positive. So I thought, what if we take this and turn it into a matrix where we try to understand this is in positive versus negative. This is intended versus unintended. So we've got four kinds of impacts. What are the intended positive impact? What did we start the company to do? So in the example of Thank You, we wanted at first to address the issue of access to clean water. So Thank You went on and built a lot of wells in the developing world in the first few years, and that was their intended positive impact. But then one day they realized, actually, by giving people access to water, we created a lot of unintended positive impact. For example, what can you do as a child when you don't have to spend 6 hours a day fetching water? Geraldine, do you want to take a guess?
Um, my immediate thought was not a great answer, I have to say, but likely using the tablets a lot more, but hopefully learning and like going to school and
Yes,
education and stuff
going
like
to
that, right?
school.
Yes.
Yeah. So they discover that in the places where they've built the wells, school attendance started going up. And we know that school attendance is the number one social mobility key for children. They attend school, they gain education, then they get a better job than their parents, and they are not forced to work in the sweatshops because they can't do anything else. And so that was an unintended positive impact. They also discovered that health went up because not only the water was cleaner and people were not having all these diseases that they had before, but also imagine all these girls not having to carry 40 kilos of water on their heads. So these are just some of the unintended positive impact. And so once they realized that what they're actually doing is tackling poverty, that shifted and that became their intended positive impact. And now today, they define their intended positive impact as addressing extreme poverty. But they also had unintended negative impacts. For example, they discovered that they were creating plastic waste, that they were encouraging consumerism. So all of these can be seen either as intended or unintended, depends if the company was aware of it, if the company's planned for it. And maybe it was unintended at first, but once you know, you cannot unknow. So now that you know, you create intended negative impact unless you decide to phase out plastic bottled water. So that's what they did. So I'm going to show you another example coming from a company that maybe a lot of you know. It's called Tom's Shoes. And what Tom's Shoes does is creating or manufacturing shoes. And for every pair of shoes that's being sold somewhere, a child in Argentina or in other parts of the world receives a pair of shoes for free. And again, they discovered that it never ends with the shoes, because once they had shoes, they were able to walk to school. They had dignity, they had better health. And so here too, Tom's Shoes started having unintended positive impact that later became part of their intended positive impact. At the same time, they knew they were starting a consumer goods company, so their intended negative impact would be, we are creating a lot of consumer items that might end up in the landfill, and we know we're doing it. But they also had unintended negative impact. So I would have loved to open it up for a discussion, but we are running a little bit out of time. So the unintended negative impact that they created was actually they took business away from local people. So there were local shoemakers, there were local shoe sellers, cobblers, and so on, shoe repairers, and they were, they were losing business. They were losing their livelihood. So then Tom said, what can we do about this? And they decided to start working with local people. For example, they give jobs with people to distribute the shoes. They work with local artists to paint on some of the shoes that they sell. And they really are trying to be more holistic in what they're doing. Let me show you a quick video. I will not be able to show you the whole thing, but I'll show you a minute, and then I'll ask Geraldine to share with everyone the links.
Tom's didn't start with the idea for a shoe. In fact, it was the absence of a shoe that started it all.
Argentina was beautiful. The music, the colors, the food, the people. But as soon as I left the city, I noticed this need. I knew nothing about shoes and very little about giving. But I had a simple idea. What if a for-profit shoe company used giving as its business model? One where for every pair of shoes sold, a new pair would be given to a child in need, one for one. They'd be shoes for a better tomorrow. Tomorrow shoes. So I called them Toms.
I remember boxing some of the first Toms at Blake's apartment. We sold 10,000 pairs that first summer, so we gave away 10,000 pairs. 10,000 pairs that protected children from disease and infection, that completed the school uniform, helping increase enrollment.
We gave repeatedly, going back time and time again to the same communities, watching the kids grow up with Toms on their feet. 10,000 became 1 million, 2 million. A spontaneous response to a simple need had evolved into something much bigger than we had expected.
We were learning to give by giving, and we were getting some of it wrong. The criticism made us take a closer look at what we were doing.
So again, here is, they don't say what criticism, but I can tell you that was part of the criticism. People were also criticizing them for creating dependency. You know, the whole phrase that if you give a person a fish, you feed them for a day, but if you teach them how to fish, you feed for them for life. And so it's like, okay, you're creating dependency on charity, you're not empowering those people, and so on. So that was part of the criticism, and they were really trying not to ignore the criticism, but work more sustainably over the solutions that they had. So I would love to open it up for a discussion and to hear what you think about social impact. Let me just say, there are companies that don't care about creating impact. There are companies that try to do impact, but they do it with random acts of charity. Then there are companies that learn over the years how to really generate a positive impact. And then you've got the thank yous and the toms that are impact enterprises. It's a company that was actually established to create a positive impact in the world. All right, so Geraldine, I think you've got a few questions. I can see some things are coming up in the chat. Let's open it up.
Thank you so much. And I really enjoyed the videos. It's just such a feel-good factor to see companies actually doing good stuff. And I was just telling Debbie years ago when I was still in university, and CSR was actually just a little bit of a module in my business course. When I asked my teacher, why do we do CSR? Why do companies do CSR? My teacher gave the answer that companies do it to look good for shareholders so that they get more investments and everything. So it kind of didn't make sense because it was kind of an oxymoron, right? If I just take more constantly, where is the whole concept of giving more and giving back to society and all that much? But to the questions. So I find it very fascinating when you mentioned about the impact washing and all that. And this question about why, like, what are the key warning signs that a business may be actually engaging in impact washing?
Yeah. And you know, your impression from your CSR course is the reason why I wrote this book and the reason why I teach CSR, because CSR is not PR. CSR without impact is just PR, and we don't want just PR. We want companies that are focused on creating positive impact seriously and with a full understanding of the complexities of creating impact. So I think there are like three red flags that you could see when companies tell us that they are creating impact. One, that's why I showed you the basic logic model. If they only talk about their inputs and activities, but they do not measure and report on their outputs, outcomes, and impact, that's a big red flag. So that means they're just talking the talk, they are not walking the walk. They might be giving a lot of money. So some of them say, we gave $10 million to charity. Okay, great, but what have you done with it? So that is the first red flag. The second red flag that I see is the attribution error. Let's call it an error, KB. We'll be forgiving. Where companies say, oh, we fixed poverty or we address SDG 4. And that makes me a little bit worried because not even the best companies in the world are able to fix poverty or address SDG 4. So what I suggest you do is you start thinking, okay, this is the impact that we want to create. How do we start doing the inputs, activities, and outputs to help us achieve this impact? And then talk about how you contributed towards this goal because you didn't do it alone. So that's the first one. And the third one is when companies talk a lot about like we have impact, we have purpose, but they don't really have the actions to back it up. So you've got to have the actions, you've got to have the data, and you've got to move away from just measuring your inputs and activities. I see some people are raising their hands. We can't take verbal questions, so please type your questions in the chat. And Geraldine, she does an amazing job in curating your questions into a discussion.
Okay, there's one firm report and attribute its efforts to macro level impacts.
I think I just answered it, but let me just clarify a little bit more. I think it's really great if your impact becomes your impact purpose as a company. So when we talk about purpose, what is the purpose of a company? Many would say it's to maximize shareholder value or to create profit. But that's the means, that is not the purpose, right? It's like saying we have a fuel in the car. That's fantastic. Congratulations. But where is the car going? So we've got to understand the direction we're taking and to have a strong impact purpose, which means we want to achieve this impact as a company, can really help you clarify what you need to do today to achieve that. So, for example, you may say, 10 years from today, I want to help address poverty, or I want this community in local or rural areas in Kenya to be doing better in health and education and equality. I don't know. And so you create this impact purpose, but you make it a long-term thinking, which is why strategic CSR always take a long-term approach. And then you start asking yourself, how am I going to do it? I am not going to be able to do that alone. So who becomes my impact partners? And that is a really important question. So you start making impact partnerships with other companies, with not-for-profit organizations, with the community, with all your stakeholders, and all of them become your impact partners to be able to achieve that. But you never say, I address poverty. You say, I contributed towards doing that impact goal. But that is very important that we understand how to start the process today so that in 10 years we can really make substantial contribution towards this societal or environmental issue.
Thank you. Thanks, Guy, for the question. We have one from Jeanette. Hi, Jeanette. I've seen you for the last 3 webinars. Thank you for joining us all the time and your really, really great questions. So Jeanette's question is, some impact, positive or negative, are challenging to measure, especially on a macro level systematic change. If we can't measure all such impact, how do we definitively, conclusively derive the net social impact? She has really good questions all the time.
So I'm actually just writing a paper now that I hope to submit to the Journal of Business Ethics around this net social impact measurement. Obviously, you can't measure everything, but I can tell you that there are some surveys from people who read CSR reports. And what they say is that they feel that companies are not being honest and holistic about their impact reporting because they tend to be a picture perfect. Look how beautiful our CSR report is. We're doing all these amazing things, but we all know that the company also have some negative impact. So even if you take a few and you say, these are the negative impacts, intended or unintended, that we're currently trying to address, that would create a lot more trust within your stakeholders and the people who read those reports, and to try and understand, even if you just try to think about, for example, 3 intended positive impacts that you created in your company, and then 3 unintended positive, 3 unintended negative, and 3 intended negative. And so you start actually putting those as your, on your metrics, and then you start working. And you may be able to even quantify them. So you are able to come up with some formula that will show where you are with your net positive impact. Is the positive greater than the negative? Then you've got net positive impact. If the negative is greater than the positive, then your net impact is negative. And so you've got to think about this as a balance sheet where you think, okay, here are the positive, here are the negative, both intended and unintended. How do I measure? How do I report? How do I quantify them? And then how do I come up with something that will make sense for me and enable me as a company to do less harm in the future and more positive contributions?
Well, this is actually very much linked to Emna's question. So thanks, Emna, for the question. So she said that you mentioned the unintended negative or positive impact of companies' actions. So what does it mean? But are these actions not mentioned in the CSR reports? and which have a positive or negative impact on the world?
On the what? Sorry?
On the world.
On the world. Okay. Where do we start? So there are things that the company would gladly report on, right? So we know that a lot of CSR reports tend to look at the company's philanthropy, including employee giving and so on. They look at their sustainability, and I'll get to that in a minute, environmental sustainability. So, for example, a lot of companies report on their carbon emissions and how they're trying to reduce them. Now, if we take my metrics, you can put that in negative impacts that you're trying to address. You're saying, look, throughout our manufacturing, transportation, whatever we're doing, we created so many, I don't know, amounts of carbon emissions, but we want to address it. So our goal is towards net zero by 2050. How are we going to get there? What do we have to do now to do that? But pay attention that a lot of these reports, and when we look at sustainability, someone here in the comments asked about using that metrics for sustainability. A lot of sustainability reports that look around the contribution to the environment are actually reporting on negative impacts. So things like carbon emissions, pollutions, waste, energy use, all of these are things the company is trying to reduce, meaning they are harm to the environment that we're trying to minimize. So they would fall under negative impacts that we're trying to minimize. But let's use our moral imagination to try and think, what can the company do to make a positive contribution to the environment? How can we shift from doing less harm to really changing the prospects of this planet or helping towards achieving that? So yes, we can use these metrics also to look at our ecological footprint and what we're doing as a company, and we will look at the positive and negative and measure it. But I want us to start talking more around the positive impact that we're creating, measure and report it more accurately than just saying we're giving some money to charity.
That's a good one in a nutshell. Leanne has an interesting question. Organizations with strong social missions, especially NPOs, often rely on dedicated staff or volunteers who feel deep moral responsibility towards beneficiaries. How can leaders use moral imagination to balance organizational purpose with safeguarding the well-being of those doing the work?
Wow, I love that question. What a great question. Thank you, Leanne, for that. So we can actually have purpose burnout. Um, on the one hand, we see purpose as something that would protect a lot of employees from burnout. As Nietzsche once said, those with a strong why can endure anyhow. They can endure anything that's coming their way. So to have a strong purpose becomes a sort of a shield against burnout, against the feeling that my job is meaningless, because purpose gives it meaning. And so for people who do work in not-for-profits, oftentimes there are some reports that they have better mental well-being and physical well-being compared to people working in companies, just because they have this sense of purpose. And they're even willing to sacrifice their salary, work in a not-for-profit organization where salaries are usually lower because of this purpose alignment that they feel with the organization. But at the same time, we do need to be open about purpose burnout. Look, I'm going to tell you a story. I think it's a very powerful story, talking about what Leanne said. My first ever research was done when I did my master's in management of not-for-profit organizations. And I wrote a thesis about women who volunteered in what was the difference between those who stayed for years and years, and those who couldn't survive that kind of volunteering. So I interviewed people, women who left after 6 months. I interviewed women who stayed for 10 years, and I tried to understand the difference between them. And what I found was that the women who stayed had a very strong purpose alignment. They cared deeply about the cause that this organization was trying to address, and they were giving the organization their everything because they really believed in the purpose. But at the same time, I still remember one of these volunteers, and she told me, she said, I was a student in university. I didn't have enough time to do my assignments because I was volunteering so much. It happened that I didn't have milk at home for 2 weeks because I didn't have enough time to go to the supermarket. I'm standing in the supermarket, grabbing the milk from the fridge, and the phone rings, and they say, there is a woman who was attacked. Could you go to the hospital with her? And she said, I dropped everything and went because I couldn't say no, but I would have liked the organization to take care of me and not ask me, knowing that I would not be able to say no. So, Leanne, this is a really important topic that we don't talk a lot about in not-for-profit organizations. When people have purpose alignment, they would do anything for the company or the organization. It's up to the organization not to abuse that kind of emotional commitment.
Oh,
Don't
wow.
cry.
It struck a chord with me personally because since young,
Yeah.
the YWCA, the Young Women, and when you go
Yeah.
there, you see similar stuff. And I think as it's really sad how things happen. And
Hmm.
yeah, but okay, like I always say,
All
on a
right.
here note, because we
More
are
questions.
yes. Okay. And Jeanette has a really interesting one as well. Is outcome on micro individual level where oh sorry let me rephrase that. So what's the difference between outcome on a micro
Okay.
individual level whereas the impact on a macro societal level? So I guess how
I
you
got
like
the
to question.
question.
Yeah.
Yeah. I got the question. So if you look back at the basic logic model, which is one of the most known and used tool in measuring social impact, the question is spot on. So when we look at the outputs and the outcomes, they are more on the individual level. So they are the participants of the program, the service recipients, the members of the community. You can also put it as groups, maybe like small organizations, but mostly they are the micro level. All right. So even if we look at the community or we look at the not-for-profit organization, we look at the people who were affected by our work. When we look at impact, according to the basic logic model, we are looking more at the macro level changes we've done to society. So the impact would be long-term solutions or outcomes for the whole community or for society. And so we're moving from different terms like receiving a meal to food security to physical health. And these are three different levels, moving from the immediate outputs for the individuals to the long-term outputs for the individual to the long-term outcomes for the society or community.
Hmm. Sorry, there's another one. But Diane has one. It says many firms do CSR that benefit its primary stakeholders, example like employee training, scholarships, etc. Do you consider this a strategic CSR because it does help with the bottom line ultimately, which is true.
So this is a good question. When we talk about CSR, we tend to divide it to internal CSR and external CSR. Internal CSR is about the employees most of the time when we're talking about employees. And so, yes, taking care of your employees, making sure that they have the conditions they need to optimize their work, that their physical and psychological well-being is taken care of, that you pair them fairly. These are all part of your internal CSR. And when I say internal, let me just add all these employees that we conveniently outsourced and don't want to think about. These are also your employees. So anyone who's manufacturing for you, even if they are not directly paid by you, they also become your people. And you should take care of them as part of your people. Um, I think I shared with you, Geraldine, the story about the Michael Moore, who was doing, did I share it with you? I can't remember. When he was doing this video or this film, documentary film called Capitalism Love Story. I'm
Yes.
speaking on so many different places that I don't remember what I said where. But he went to the CEO of Nike and he said, "I've got airline tickets. Let's go to Indonesia and visit the factories where they make your shoes." And the CEO is like laughing uncomfortably. And Michael Moore says, "Oh, don't worry. These are first class and it's flexible dates. Let's find a day that works for you." And then the CEO laughs and he says, "I've never been to Indonesia." And for me, that was such a shocker because you don't even look at the faces of the people who manufacture for you. You just alienated them. You just don't see them as your people. And true, they might be called suppliers, but they're part of the people who are working for you, and you should pay respect and dignity to them. That's internal CSR. Then we have external CSR that looks more around the impact on the community, on the environment, et cetera, et cetera. And Kevin Rudd, the former Prime Minister of Australia, once said, "No company will be believed on their CSR if they don't take care of their employees first." So you've got to do both. And so, absolutely, to your question, taking care of your employees is strategic CSR. It's the right thing to do. And it will also benefit the company and its employees, its performance. So it's strategic, but at the same time, we aim to create net positive impact, including with our employees, so they will feel like they're gaining more than giving in this company.
I don't see a reason why a company cannot actually benefit from doing good CSR. It's kind of like a carrot kind of thing. There's no need to, yeah, suffer. It's a
Yeah.
big as possible. Okay, this one is interesting from Ilari. So it's linked to the Patagonia that you mentioned in the last one. So
I
could
love
we think that
that.
social, could we think that social impact has a way to measure purpose? Because lately, the purposes of business organizations have tended to be inspirational, aspirational, and ethical groundings for business as usual, and very tricky to measure. Like Patagonia, we are in business to save the world. It sounds great, but what does it mean and how does it show in this place for impact to step in?
Wow, I love that. And I love the reference to the last webinar. So I wrote another book. It's called Make It Meaningful on how to find purpose in life and at work. And it talks a lot about how we find purpose. And the way I explain purpose is that it is about the impact that we want to create. So you ask people, what is your life purpose? Some people would say it's to raise my kids, to make sure my family is taken care of, to do my job. And these are all good purposes. But what I talk about is impact purpose. How can you use who you are and what you know to serve, to make a difference, to help increase people's quality of life? And so that is what we call impact purpose. So the same for companies. Companies also should have strong impact purpose. And that means that our purpose cannot be just to maximize profit. It should also be how are we going as a company to make a difference in the world? Patagonia is, I think, is one of the worst examples for purpose washing because Yvonne Chiner said, people don't realize how serious we are about the environment. We are dead serious. So their slogan is, we're in the business to save our home planet. And they're dead serious about it. They even say the environment is our only shareholder. And so in everything that they do, they have this analysis. You can actually go on their website and you will see them doing sort of the metrics without the metrics, but they report on the positive and negative impacts on every item that you buy from them. So if you want to buy, I don't know, a jacket from Patagonia, it will show you, how much energy was used to create that, how people were treated, everything about the positive and the negative impacts of this is how the company is measuring that. they just need to want it a little bit more. But I think that moving towards a strong and measurable impact purpose is the only way to PR.
Okay, I'm going to close off by asking this one other question around moral imagination, because it's something that you
Yeah.
shared just recently, and it's also very fascinating. So the concept of moral imagination actually suggests predicting unforeseen outcomes, right? So how
Yes.
can leaders practically apply this into decision making without actually slowing down innovation and therefore like business operations and everything?
Well, things can be happening in parallel. So you would, for example, have a team that works on innovation. At the same time, you would have a team that works on your impact. And part of it is imagining who we might affect with this new innovation, right? We're creating a new product. How this product is going to create positive outcomes for people, how is it going to create negative outcomes for people, what can we do right now as we innovate the product, as we do design thinking, right? How can we do sustainable design thinking for people and for the planet to make sure that we create less harm and doing more of a positive contribution? But then we go and we have meaningful, courageous conversations with our stakeholders and we ask them, what do you think about this product? I mean, companies for decades haven't been innovating without doing focus groups with potential consumers, asking them if they're going to like the product, if they're going to buy the product. They've been doing it for maybe longer than decades. What is the issue of doing focus groups on the positive and negative impacts of the product? Not just asking, is it tasty? Are you going to buy it? But to ask them, what do you think about the packages? How can we make it more sustainable? You work with experts, you work with community representatives, you work with indigenous communities. You try to understand the positive and negative outcomes for everything that you do, just like you have focus groups of whether or not people are going to buy it.
Okay, so I think this is a very nice wrap up. So what I'm going to do is do a final shout out to everybody. Thank you very much for being a part of our CSR webinar series. It's been a really amazing journey overall, even for myself. I learned so much from Debbie. And please do fill out the post-webinar surveys, then we'll send you the materials and so forth. It's also a way of getting consent that you want to receive stuff from us. And we will invite you to any webinars that we have coming up next. But currently now, this is the last one of the webinar series. And do check out Debbie's really amazing third edition published by Sage just a couple of months back, or like just recently actually. So do scan the QR code if you want to, and you can check out more for Sage Catalyst titles, and do link up with Debbie on LinkedIn because she has to post so many amazing things. Like I do it, I search for her all the time on LinkedIn, and she
I get a lot of likes from Geraldine. Thank you for the likes, Geraldine.
Thank you so much for posting great stuff. And thank you everyone for attending and being a part of this webinar. And thank you for the really, really amazing questions that came across. And I hope that you enjoyed yourself.
Thank you so much. And if you do subscribe to the book, I will be in touch with you. I'll see if I can do guest lecture for you, whatever I can do to support you in your CSR journey. So thank you. And I would like to also thank Geraldine for 3 amazing webinars. Love doing it with you. We're starting to maybe conspire about doing some more next year.
What a choice of
watch
word.
this space. And thank you all for coming and joining us. We loved it.
Thank you. So to that point, because we are thinking of doing something a little bit more next year, if you have any particular topics or niche areas that you're hoping that Debbie can share more about, please feel free to drop it in the chat or put it in the survey, or you can just drop even Debbie a message on LinkedIn about this. Okay?
Thanks,
So
everyone.
thanks, everyone. Have a great rest of your
Good day,
day.
good evening.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.